Hi everyone, just wanted to go over last week, this week to come, and a few of your quiz questions as well. So last week we were talking about competency, we were talking about how different types of best practices, how HR is, the importance in a healthcare organization and what some of the best practices are with regard to that. So we had our assignment about um, the work of a department manager. When we're talking about, and I should probably better define this because just based on some of the discussions thus far, I don't know that it's 100% clear. So when I say department manager, I'm really talking about a manager outside of human resources. So department manager is really you potentially working in a department. You might be working over quality, you might be working in compliance, you might be working over a clinical unit, but you as a department manager, as opposed to an HR manager or an HR director who work in HR. So just wanted to clarify that a little bit. So we had our quiz, we'll talk about in a minute. We had our short paper and then our discussion. So for this week to come, in week 3, we're going to talk about interviewing. So interviewing is really that whole process of interviewing someone, what you can ask, what you can't ask, what are the most effective ways to interview, those types of things, really important. And the notion of recruitment overall, really important to make sure that you're really getting the very best people to work in your organization. So that's really our focus for this week. We're going to look at recruitment materials in the week 3 discussion. I would encourage you to look outside of the area too, because you can certainly look here in the Pittsburgh area, but feel free to look outside of the area, maybe large organizations outside of this area to give you some additional insight. Our written assignment this week is an infographic about hiring and what can and cannot be included in an interview from a legal perspective. So what I would suggest here is really writing or creating an infographic, one-page infographic that looks at this topic about interviewing and what you can and cannot do and say for maybe a new manager that's never been a hiring manager before. So from an HR perspective, what types of things would you as a hiring manager want to know if you were new to that role? So that's what we're looking for there. And then we have our quiz and our Ed puzzle this week as well. So I do have a few. I did regrade the quiz for this past week. There were a couple of answers that were incorrect, so you did see your grade go up a little bit, likely. There were a couple things that were just wacky and should have. 100% my fault when I was creating the quiz itself. I just marked the wrong answer. So you'll see that, but also I did want to go over a few that weren't changed that are important to talk about. So first one, why may outsourcing of some particular task or activity be undertaken? So our answer, the existing staff do not have sufficient time to perform it adequately. The one thing I would suggest, and if you've had me in class before, you've heard me say this, but when we're looking at multiple choice questions, you're really looking at what the best answer is. So there is, it's important to understand that you may not see these exact words in your textbook or in your reading, but it's really about choosing the best answer here. So I think the one that was most chosen frequently, other than the correct answer, was there's cost neutrality in outsourcing. And actually, a lot of times outsourcing is cheaper for an organization, especially in areas where it's something they're not terribly good at. So for example, in a hospital healthcare facility, oftentimes the dietary function is outsourced. So you'll hire a company like what are they called? Not Eaton Park. Parkhurst. You hire a company like Parkhurst, who owns Eaton Park, but does our food service at RMU, or you'll hire a company like Sodexo or something like that to come in and manage that operation. It often ends up being cheaper than if you hired people across the spectrum to do all of that work for you because they have that expertise. They have the people, they have the systems. it tends to be cheaper to outsource certain things. Now, you will see outsourcing from the HR department in things like if maybe you have a reorganization and you're offering services to those that have been involuntarily terminated. That tends to be an option that tends to be outsourced. I'm trying to think of other HR functions. Sometimes payroll can be outsourced, although most organizations do, most large organizations do manage their own payroll, but sometimes that can be outsourced as well, especially in a smaller organization when it's expensive to have the people that have that right expertise, have a payroll system, et cetera. So generally, the main reason that you would look to outsource something is you don't have the right people to do that. And so existing staff just don't have time to perform it adequately is our best answer in this case. Since we were talking about payroll, why was the payroll office, once a constant feature of HR departments, removed from HR? So generally, the main reason that this is the case is because payroll is really much more about accounting and finance than it is about human resources. So the knowledge and expertise that you need to do payroll is tax law, information about the finance aspects itself, all of those things. So very much more focused in accounting and finance and less focused in in human resources or in human capital. So that's really the main focus of why it was removed. Most everyone, if they didn't answer that, they answered it was seen as more efficient to have payroll done. And like I just mentioned in the last question, it can be more efficient, but that's certainly not the main reason it was removed. Some places do have payroll done by an outside service, but large organizations do not. They run their own payroll department. And even I would consider RMU to be kind of a mid-size organization. We do our own payroll. We have payroll people in-house, but they have a much different expertise than a human resource person. So that's that knowledge and expertise base is really what drives that. Next question. Why is every manager a manager of human resources, even if that is not in the primary job description of that manager? So our answer is that that manager's principal task is about getting things done through people. So people are the primary resources they're managing. And that's very true. You are, even though you're not human resources, you are managing your team, and they are human capital. So everyone is responsible for human capital. All managers are. There will be project managers; they may not be, but anyone that has anyone that has direct reports will be managing people. So that really makes human resources your job. For example, you may have someone come to you about a payroll issue. You may have someone come to you about a benefits issue, about an issue with time off. You're always, as a department manager or as a manager of a team, you're always going to be the first stop for people. So important to know that you're managing people. So your primary resource is are humans. Therefore, human resources is your job. I think this is the last one. What must a department manager do concerning organizations' compensations and benefit programs? So we don't want department managers to necessarily be expert on things. That's what the human resources folks are for. But you do need to know something. You can't avoid discussion and send everything to HR, and you don't need to be expert. You need to know and understand what are the comp and benefit issues related to your area, and be able to address routine questions. So I'll just use since RMU is an easy example, even though it's not healthcare, it runs in a similar fashion. So at RMU we have a union. The faculty are unionized, and it can be easy for a department manager, a department head, program chair, or whatever, to say, hey, it's not my job to know the union contract, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'll defer those questions to HR. But it really is the job of every person that's managing people that are part of that contract. So anyone involved with faculty, it really is their job to understand those compensation benefit issues related to the contract and be able to answer questions. Now, luckily, most folks at RMU If they're in an academic administration role, they likely came from faculty. They probably started there, so they have some idea. But to just say, oh, well, I don't know it, I don't understand it, and send people to HR would be inappropriate for a department manager. It's really up to the department managers to know and understand what's going on with regard to the comp and benefits for their employees. So that is all we've got. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing you all in the classroom. Thanks.